I literally started my real estate journey with no money and not a whole lot of time. In fact, I was working my W-2 job full time as a pharmacist, and as a pharmacist job, it was actually very demanding. Yet I was still able to buy one cash flowing property per year and was able to achieve financial freedom after about 5 years. And in this video, we're going to go step by step through how I actually did this. So it all started out in 2015 when I got my first pharmacist job, and I was working a whole lot of overtime. I was working these double shifts from 7:30 a.m. until 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. I also picked up a second job. So I was working as a retail pharmacist at Rite Aid, and I was also working in the hospital at Kaiser. Working those two jobs was very difficult and challenging, but well worth it. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make to get my foot in the door in real estate investing as soon as possible. So I basically saved up as much as I could until I had that first 20% down payment on my first rental. Once I had that 20% down, I bought my first property, a $262,000 purchase in Stockton, California, and I rented it out to college students at my alma mater college. By renting out by the bedroom, I was able to make a lot more cash flow than if I rented out the whole house. For instance, if I got the house to about 6 bedrooms and rented out each bedroom for $600 to $700 per room, that means the house would make about $3,600 to $4,200 per month in rental income. And that really allowed me to accelerate and reinvest my cash flow. Now, you don't need to have 20% down on every single purchase if you use creative financing. Some people, they will do a house hack, and that requires only a 3.5% down payment, where they live in the master bedroom and rent out all the other rooms to housemates. What I did was I actually purchased my second house using a second home loan. Now, a second home loan allows you to put as low as a 10% down payment depending on the time you're in. And a second home loan is also called a vacation home because usually you have to live in it for at least 14 days out of the year. And most lenders, they have that requirement. And that's what allowed me to get that second house because I didn't have a 20% down payment available. I only had 10% down, which was, for me, it was $30,000. So I had to get creative and use the second home loan to put that 10% down. And doing this allowed me to expand my portfolio a little bit faster without over leveraging myself. Now, when it came to the third property in my third year of investing, what's really cool about real estate is it appreciates over time, and you're actually able to use the equity that you build up on that property to purchase more properties. So on that third property, I used something called a home equity line of credit, which allowed me to use the property's equity as a down payment on the third property that I bought, rather than using cash out of my pocket. So I basically bought that third property without any cash from my pocket. Instead, I used a home equity line of credit. So let me go ahead and do some HELOC math for you so you see how this actually plays out. But before we go to the whiteboard, I want to make one more point here. You want to get to a point where money makes more money for you. Basically, your money goes out there and works hard for you to make more money. At that point, that's true investing. And for real estate, for me at least, that was around year 3 because my properties, my assets appreciated so much that I was able to use that equity to purchase my next property. Because I was literally using the money I had in the deal to purchase more properties and feed into the next deal and the next deal. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the whiteboard and do the HELOC math. So to calculate how much cash you can take out using a home equity line of credit, you basically take your current value of your property, right here, as estimated by an appraisal report, or a lot of times you can have your realtor estimate the value of the property by looking at comparable properties. And then you multiply that by 80% because most HELOCs are able to lend you up to 80% of the current value of the home. And then from that number, you subtract out your current loan value. So whatever is left on the loan at this time. So let me go ahead and go through an actual example so it makes a lot more sense. Okay, in this example, we're going to assume the total value of the home right now is $300,000. So the first thing we want to do is take $300,000 and multiply it by 80%, and that gives us $240,000. Next, we're going to take that number and subtract out the current loan value. So in this case, we're going to say the loan value is $140,000 left on that loan. So the total that you can cash out using the HELOC is $240,000 minus the loan value of $140,000, and that leaves you with $100,000 that you can take out using the home equity line of credit. So hopefully that math was pretty simple and you kind of understand how to figure out how much cash you can take out using a home equity line of credit on your property around year 3. So basically what happened for my property is it essentially went up about $25,000 per year. So that very first property around year 3 had about $75,000 built up on it. And I was able to take out that money and use that as a down payment on that third property without using any money out of pocket. And I continued repeating this process where I would take out HELOCs and reinvest my W-2 income along with the cash flow that I was making on those rentals to purchase one cash flowing property every single year until I was at maybe 6 properties. That's when I sold my very first property and started investing in some properties out of state. And by then, I was a millionaire. By age 28, I was able to build up enough equity and cash flow on my properties to become a millionaire. By age 31, that's when I was actually able to quit pharmacy and have financial freedom because the cash flow that I was making on those properties fully replaced my pharmacist income. So that's how I was able to retire at the age of 31, which allowed me to really buy back my time during my early 30s, be able to travel the world more, spend more time with family, and spend more time with hobbies and passions of mine. So it was a truly liberating experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Ever since I bought that very first property, it definitely has been like a dream of mine to achieve financial freedom. And I'll tell you, on the other side of financial freedom, you have a lot more flexibility with your time. You can set your own schedule. You can spend time with who you want, where you want, when you want, etc. So really this journey was very transformative for me, and I think it will be very transformative for you. You just have to get started with that very first property, and then eventually it will snowball over time. So let's go ahead and talk about the last key piece of this, which is you want to make sure that when you're buying these properties, it doesn't become a second job for you. You want to really have systems and teams in place so that you have true financial freedom, where you're not trading your time for money. The system's kind of running on its own. You have people that you can count on whenever there's maintenance issues or tenant issues that come up. So I'll go over exactly how I created my systems and my teams. So for my systems, it's really important to have a good way to track all the rents that are coming in, the utility bills, and billing back the tenants. So what I do is when I got started, I had an Excel sheet where I tracked all of the utility bills, divided it equally among the tenants that I had at the house, and then sent it to them at the end of every month. And this took maybe a few hours or so. And overall, management eventually came to a point where I was spending about 4 hours a week on it. So it wasn't a whole lot of time. I was able to still do this while I was working 40 hours a week as a pharmacist, sometimes even overtime as a pharmacist. So it's definitely doable for you as well. Eventually, I got to a point where I had a lot of properties and I had to keep a track of a lot of rents. And I had 90 tenants. So I started hiring out a bookkeeper in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, the going rate is usually between $7 to $10 per hour. So for me, I was able to really hire that team member and have them do all the bookkeeping for me, which saved me a good amount of time as well. In addition to having a really good bookkeeping system, I also had to have a really good marketing system. So I set up these automations on the back end of my business, but what really helped was having Google Forms organize all the applications for me. So whenever a student was interested in one of my properties, I would send them a Google form which asked them questions like, what college year are you? What are you studying? How long are you planning to stay? Do you smoke? Do you have pets? That type of stuff. And I was able to collect all their information so that I could follow up with them in the future to have them tour the property or eventually sign a lease. So what's nice about Google Forms is once they fill it out, it will actually automatically populate on a Google Sheet so that you have all of their answers in one place. So that system really helped me manage and organize all of the people who are applying to my property. The other thing I had to do was build up teams. So in real estate, it's very important to have a very strong core team. And what makes up your core team is your realtor, your lenders, your contractors, and handymen, and potentially a property manager. So I essentially found one or two people who was good for each of those roles that I can count on in case something happened. So for example, when my furnace broke in the middle of winter and it was 0 degrees outside, the tenants were freezing, and I was worried that somebody was going to get frostbite and go to a hospital. Luckily, I built up a system on the back end. I had a team in place for that. So I had a HVAC contractor that I really trusted. We called them up. They brought in a new furnace, replaced it all within about a day and a half or so, a day to a day and a half. And basically, they were able to get the heating back on, and the tenants are not suffering. But if I didn't have that team and those people that I could count on, obviously it would have been a much bigger emergency for me. So instead of having to interrupt my vacation and have to be on the call for the whole day, basically I just made one call to the HVAC contractor and they took care of the situation from there. So it's really important you have strong contractors and strong people on your team. Another person I recommend having is sort of like a boots on the ground house mom. So the house mom, for me, they do all of our property tours and they resolve any like tenant versus tenant conflicts. They will actually be there to mediate housemate conflicts and housemate discussions. And so for me, that also helped out whenever there was a tenant dispute at one of my properties. That allowed me to eventually scale to where I am at today with 14 student rentals. But again, I started out at one property per year, so you definitely don't have to have all of these people on your team at the very beginning. You just kind of build them up over time until you find people that you can count on. And once you have that system in place, it really allows you to scale your portfolio to reach financial freedom. The last thing I would say that really accelerated my path to financial freedom was renting out by the bedroom, because every single house that I was able to rent out by the bedroom, I essentially was able to make $1,500 or more per month in cash flow. That's after all expenses. And because I was able to do that, that allowed me to continually reinvest into more and more properties. So if you're just getting started in real estate investing, I highly recommend starting off with a rent by the room strategy so that you can maximize that cash flow and make this very sustainable for you. And that's it for this video. That's how I was able to reach financial freedom, by buying one cash flowing property at a time. If you have any questions about that, leave that question in the comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your friends or others who are really struggling with getting started in real estate investing so that it can help them along their journey. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.